of Latin America and the Caribbean. Your speaker sits on the planning committee of the Speakers Conference of the IPU. He also co-chairs with a member of the European Parliament the IPU engagement with the World Trade Organization. In the Caribbean, we held the chairmanship of our Caribbean Atlantic region of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, and we also sit on the executive of parliamentary grouping of the OAS. And last year, we took over the regional secretariat of the Commonwealth two years later to the regional competitions. As of today, we have conducted 158 debates. And by the end of the nationals, which starts next week, it'll be 176 youth debates, the longest running. My very special thanks to Minister Ramson and Minister Manichan and the two ministries, along with the regional officials for coordinating, assisting, and fully supporting these efforts. With respect to the youth parliament, we have held every youth parliament since this 12th parliament convened. And not only that, our outstanding youth parliamentarians have participated in youth debates in the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago, Turks and Caicos, and they have gone as far as New Zealand to represent our youth parliament at the Commonwealth Youth Parliamentary Association. Again, for these debates and the youth parliament, so many persons to thank: our staff, parents, teachers, mentors, judges, and especially many of you who serve as coaches and mentors for the youth parliamentarians. Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk.
Presentation of petitions, presentation of papers and reports.
Governance. Audited financial statement of Guyana Wildlife.
My apologies, Mr. Speaker. I was trying to get the speakers list finished. I wish to present to the Assembly the audited financial statements of the Guyana Wildlife Conservation and Management Commission for the years ended 31st December 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Clerk.
Oral questions without notice. Questions on notice.
People. All of these questions are in the name of the Honorable Member, Ms. Annette Ferguson, and are for written replies. Questions 1 and 2 are for the Honorable Minister of Housing and Water, and the answers to those questions have been circulated. Questions number 3, 4, and 5 are for the Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance and public service. The answers to these questions will be deferred to a later date. Mr. Clerk.
Statements by ministers, including policy statements.
Honourable members, in accordance with Standing Order number 28-2, I have given consent to proceed with the following motion at this sitting.
Did I? Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to move the following motion. Whereas in accordance with the Standing Order number 112, any one or more of these standing orders may be suspended. And whereas the government is desirous of its motion on support for the government and people of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, reaffirming the sovereignty of Guyana over its internationally recognized territory, to stand as the first item of public business at the sitting of the National Assembly on Friday, the 23rd May 2025. Be it resolved that a standing order number 112 be suspended to allow the motion to stand as the first item of public business. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable members, I now put the motion. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no. Ayes have it. The motion is carried. Mr. Clerk.
Introduction of bills. Public business.
And international cooperation.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today with the solemn duty and profound honor to move a motion reaffirming the sovereignty of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana over its internationally recognized territory. This matter is beyond geography or cartography. It is of history, borders we inherited are not lines. They are the product of international agreements, arbitral awards, and the rule of law, respected by the international community and upheld by the values of peace and justice that we subscribe to as a nation, as contained in the United Nations Charter. Mr. Speaker, the Guyana-Venezuela controversy remains the paramount threat to not only the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Guyana, but the continued political independence of this great nation, its economic aspirations, the social development of our people and their human right to live in a country that is secure, free from fear, without the constant threat of violence, coercion, or oppression from external forces. Guyana has faced this threat from the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela even before our nation attained independence on the 26th of May, 1966. Then, from the very moment of our emergence as a sovereign nation, Venezuela relentlessly sought to assert its baseless and expansionist claim to our Essequibo region. More than two-thirds of our national territory in furtherance of our rejection of the 1899 Arbitral Award, a legally binding international decision that definitively settled the border between the then British Guyana and the then United States of Venezuela, and that the latter recognized and accepted as a valid and binding for over 60 years from the time of its issuance until 1962. Since the government took office in 2020, Venezuela's threats, intimidation tactics, and illegal actions have grown more frequent, more desperate, and more intense. This in an effort to force Guyana to abandon the process before the ICJ and return to the negotiation table with Venezuela. On December 18, 2020, following the issuance of the International Court of Justice ruling that it had jurisdiction to hear Guyana's case on the validity of the 1899 Arbitral Award, Venezuela's National Assembly adopted a resolution rejecting the jurisdiction of the court. This action defied the Geneva Agreement and signaled Venezuela's refusal to abide by international law. On January 7, 2021, President Nicolas Maduro issued Decree number 4415, unilaterally claiming Venezuela's sovereignty over Guyana's maritime space, including its exclusive economic zone, or EEZ, and the continental shelf. This directly violated the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, and General International Law of the Sea, and breached the Geneva Agreement's requirement that for there to be no enlargement of existing claims. On January 21, 2021, the Venezuelan Navy intercepted and detained two Guyana-registered fishing vessels, Lady Naira and Sea Wolf, along with their crews within Guyana's exclusive economic zone near Winey Point. This constituted a clear violation of international law and demonstrated Venezuela's use of illegal, coercive tactics. Mr. Speaker, in March 2021, Venezuela's armed forces announced the creation of an integrated defense zone near Guyana's maritime space and deployed military assets to the area. This violated Article 2.4 of the United Nations Charter relating to the threat of the use of force. Throughout 2021 into 2022, Venezuela escalated military activities along the border with Guyana, including low-altitude flyovers of troop mobilizations near the Cuyuni River, breaching Guyana's airspace and adopting an aggressive posture by mobilizing military assets. Late 2022, Venezuela intensified domestic propaganda campaigns promoting sovereignty over Guyana's Essequibo region. This laid the foundation for a referendum held on December 3rd, 2023, with the aim to garner public support for the creation of a state of Guyana Essequibo and the incorporation of that state into the map of Venezuela, dismissing the jurisdiction of the ICJ as a means of settlement to the controversy. The Venezuelan National Assembly passed a resolution on September 21st, 2023, calling for a referendum regarding enforcement of Venezuela's claim, so-called claim, to Guyana's Essequibo region. Mr. Speaker, on the 24th of September, same year, 2023, 3 fighter jets from Venezuela's Bolivarian National Armed Forces conducted flight maneuvers over the Guyanese community of Etteringban on the Cuyuni River. In October 2023, or the 23rd of October 2023, Venezuela published 5 questions to be answered by the people of Venezuela in the referendum scheduled for the 3rd of December 2023. The most egregious questions that were put to the Venezuelan people sought to determine whether they agree with the creation of the state of Guyana Essequibo, the incorporation of that state into the map of Venezuela, and Venezuela's historical position of not recognizing the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice as a means of settlement of the controversy. Mr. Speaker, on November 1st of 2023, Venezuela reiterated its claim to our Essequibo region, challenging the ICJ's jurisdiction. These statements were condemned internationally, which sought to discredit the court and undermine international legal norms. The 1st of December 2023, the ICJ issued binding provisional measures ordering Venezuela to refrain disturbing the status quo in which Guyana administers and controls the Essequibo region, our Essequibo region, and to refrain from escalating the territorial controversy. Mr. Speaker, within 48 hours, Venezuela violated that order. On December 3rd, 2023, Venezuela held a consultative referendum supporting annexation of our Essequibo and proposing the creation of a so-called new state, Guyana Essequibo. Mr. Speaker, on the 6th of December 2023, Venezuela initiated legislative and administrative actions to enforce the referendum's results and create a so-called Guyana Essequibo, defying International Court of Justice order. On the 9th of December 2023, Venezuela completed and inaugurated a Venezuela continued advancing the referendum's results, ignoring international condemnation. In late of 2023 into early 2024, Venezuela engaged in sustained aggression, including military deployments near the Guyana border and anti-Guyana propaganda, and first hinted the potential inclusion of our Essequibo in Venezuelan elections. Mr. Speaker, on January 7, 2024, Guyana protested Venezuela's interference in the Milo Falls Hydro Project through a note reaffirming the project's execution in Guyana's sovereign territory. On March 15, 2024, two Venezuelan aircraft flew over Guyanese territory in Embotero, violating Guyana's airspace. On April 3rd, 2024, Venezuela passed an organic law for the defense of the so-called Guyana Essequibo, attempting to formalize its claim to our Essequibo in violation of the ICJ's provisional measures and the Joint Declaration of Argyll. Mr. Speaker, on August 19, 2024, Guyana protested via a note verbal Venezuela's military activity and preparatory work to reconstruct a bridge connecting Ancoco Island to its mainland, further militarizing the island where the boundary between the for the fictitious Guyana Essequibo state for the so-called elections. Mr. Speaker, on May 2nd, 2025, Venezuela rejected the May 1st order of the International Court of Justice, directing Venezuela to refrain from holding elections in Guyana's Essequibo region. Venezuela called the order a statement and declared its refusal to comply with any decisions from the court on the Essequibo matter. Mr. Speaker, in each and every situation that I mentioned here where Venezuela violated our territorial integrity, we took immediate, decisive, and strategic action. We first lodged a protest with Venezuela. Secondly, we reaffirmed the International Court of Justice of the belligerent actions of Venezuela in a matter that is currently before it. The court now possesses a chronicle of all of the actions of Venezuela that represent an affront to the said court's jurisdiction and a breach of international law, which it can use in arriving at a final decision in this case. Thirdly, we informed the United Nations Secretary General. The Secretary General has a clear picture of the increasing belligerence of Venezuela in the furtherance of its illegal claim to Guyana's territory. Fourthly, the entire diplomatic mechanism within the Foreign Ministry is engaged on a two-pronged basis. The ministry engages its international partners on the issue, including key international organizations like the CARICOM, the Commonwealth, the Organization of African, Asian, and Pacific, African, Caribbean, and Pacific states, the European Union, and other states on a bilateral basis. Further, all of Guyana's missions abroad, including honorary consuls, received instructions and the technical support that they need to engage their host countries and countries that they are accredited to on this issue. Mr. Speaker, Guyana currently has diplomatic representation across the world. It therefore means that we are engaging several parts of the globe on this issue. We will continue to ramp up our diplomatic representation abroad. Mr. Speaker, the ministry also, in the spirit of transparency, makes public statements on particular issues regarding the controversy that it is at the time engaging. We have significantly intensified our legal and diplomatic efforts to preserve our sovereignty and territorial integrity in response to Venezuela's escalating claims over our Essequibo region. Mr. Speaker, on the legal front, you're aware that in March 2018, Guyana filed an application with the International Court of Justice, instituting proceedings against Venezuela, in which it asks the court to determine that the 1899 arbitral award is valid and binding to both states, and that the lawful international boundary is the one established by this said award. Mr. Speaker, the court determined that it would first decide on the question of jurisdiction. Following written presentations by both states and oral hearings on June 30th, 2020, it issued a decision, that is the court, on December 18, 2020, that it had jurisdiction to hear the case on the merits of Guyana's application concerning the validity of the arbitral award of 1899 and the related question to the definitive settlement of the land boundary between the two countries. Venezuela condemned that decision without justification as biased and irregular. However, that decision is binding on both parties under international law. On March 8, 2022, in accordance with the court's scheduling order, Guyana filed its memorial on the merits of its case against Venezuela. In response, Venezuela filed preliminary objections to the admissibility of Guyana's claims on June 7, 2022, urging the court to exercise its discretion to refuse to rule on those claims. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with the rules of the court, the proceedings on the merits were suspended until the determination by the court of the matter of Venezuela's preliminary objections. Guyana submitted its written response to the preliminary objections on July 15, 2022. The court heard oral hearings from both Guyana and Venezuela, and Venezuela's objections over the period November 17th to the 22nd, 2022, and on April 6th, 2023, gave its judgment on Venezuela's objections, which is final without appeal and binding on the parties. Mr. Speaker, the court rejected Venezuela's objections and decided again that it will adjudicate upon the merits of the claims of Guyana. We, of course, welcomed the court's decision. Venezuela, for its part, indicated its dissatisfaction. On the 9th of December 2024, Guyana submitted to the court its final written brief on the merits of the case. Venezuela's final written submission is due to be filed on August 11th, 2025. Thereafter, the court will schedule hearings, oral hearings on the merits of the case, to be followed by the court's deliberations and issuance of its final judgment, which will be binding on the parties under international law. Mr. Speaker, you're also aware that on 2 occasions, Guyana was forced to request from the International Court of Justice a protection against Venezuela and was successful in each of its applications. In the first instance, the Venezuelan National Assembly passed a resolution on September 21st, 2023, calling for a referendum regarding enforcement of Venezuela's claim to the so-called Guyana's Essequibo region. We had condemned the passing of that resolution as illegal since it violates the 1966 Geneva Agreement and is inconsistent with the United Nations Secretary General's decision to submit the question of the validity of the international boundary to the International Court of Justice for adjudication. Mr. Speaker, Venezuela's decision to conduct the referendum also drew condemnation from the Organization of American States, or the OAS, the Commonwealth, and the CARICOM community. On the 23rd of October 2023, Venezuela published 5 questions to be answered by the people of Venezuela in the referendum scheduled for December 3rd, 2023. The most outrageous questions that were put to the Venezuelan people sought to determine whether they agree with the so-called creation of the state of Guyana Essequibo, the incorporation of that state into the map of Venezuela, and Venezuela's historical position of not recognizing the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice as a means of settlement of the controversy. Mr. Speaker, this Honorable House passed a motion on the 6th of November 2023 in response to that threat. We approached the International Court of Justice for provisional measures, specifically to request that Venezuela be ordered not to take any actions that will be called for by the referendum, including especially creation of a new Venezuelan state consisting Guyana's Essequibo region and incorporating it into Venezuela's territory, or granting Venezuelan citizenship or identity cards to the population, because these actions would amount to an unlawful annexation of Guyana's territory, in violation of the most fundamental principles of international law enshrined in the United Nations Charter. Mr. Speaker, the oral arguments of Guyana and Venezuela were presented to the International Court on the 14th and 15th of November 2023, respectively. On the 1st of December 2023, the International Court of Justice unanimously issued its order, stating that inter alia, 1, pending a final decision in the case, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela shall refrain from taking any action which would modify the situation that currently prevails in the territory of dispute, whereby the Cooperative Republic of Ghana administers and exercises control over that area. And 2, both parties shall refrain from any action which might aggravate or extend the dispute before the court or make it more difficult to resolve. Mr. Speaker, on the second occasion, it came to the attention of the government that on the 7th of January 2025, President Maduro announced that Venezuela will hold elections for a governor and legislative council of the so-called Guyana Essequibo state to be elected by the people of that said state, which is the name Venezuela has given to Guyana's Essequibo region. Mr. Speaker, despite Guyana's protest, the elections have been scheduled for May 25th, 2025. In response to Venezuela's announced plans and actions, on March 6, 2025, Ghana filed a new request for provisional measures with the International Court of Justice, seeking an order prohibiting Venezuela from carrying out elections for our sovereign territory. We pointed out that Venezuela's plan to hold elections in the territory would flagrantly violate the court's order of December 1st, 2023. Mr. Speaker, on May 1st, 2025, the International Court of Justice issued its order. In this order, the court, 1, unanimously reaffirms the provisional measures indicated in its order of December 1st, 2023, which should be immediately and effectively implemented. And 2, by a vote of 12-3, indicated the following provisional measure. Pending a final decision in the case, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela shall refrain from conducting elections or preparing to conduct elections in the territory of dispute, which the Cooperative Republic of Guyana currently administers and over which it exercises control. Mr. Speaker, I will take a moment here to address 2 critical points about the court's decision of May 1st. The first is that the 3 judges The first is that the 3 votes of the judges, Shohi, Bandari, and Nolte, against the provisional measure are not votes against Guyana. In their dissenting opinion, the judges pointed out that they voted against the provisional measure only for a procedural reason. They indicated that they agree in substance with Venezuela that Venezuela must refrain from conducting elections or preparing to conduct elections for our territory. The procedural reason was that the judges felt that the order of the 1st of December 2023 already prohibits the actions that are now planned by Venezuela, and that accordingly, there is no need for an additional order. 12 judges agreed that the existing order prohibited Venezuela's planned actions but voted for an additional order, which brought even more relevance and importance to the matter before the court. Mr. Speaker, the second issue is respect to the order that I wish to address is an important segue into the next topic that I wish to discuss, which is the role of diplomacy and the role of the government in preserving Guyana's territorial integrity. In paragraph 39 of its order, the court observes that the acts taken or planned to be taken by Venezuela after the court's order of December 1st, 2023, have given rise to expressions of concern by the Security Council in a statement dated the 15th of April, 2024, and I quote, about the possible escalation of tensions between Venezuela and Guyana. Mr. Speaker, you will recall that on April 3rd, 2024, Venezuela promulgated the organic law in defense of the so-called Guyana Essequibo, purporting to formally incorporate our Essequibo region into Venezuela, breaching the order of December 1st, 2023. On April 9th of 2024, the United Nations Security Council facilitated Guyana's request for a private meeting of the Council to address the promulgation of the law by Venezuela purporting to annex more than 2/3 of Guyana's sovereign territory and make it part of Venezuela. Following the meeting, the Security Council issued a statement on April 15th, 2024, expressing their concern about the possible escalation of tensions between Venezuela and Guyana. They urged the parties to exercise maximum restraint, reminding them of the obligations to comply with the order issued by the International Court of Justice on December 1st of 2023. The Security Council also reaffirmed the importance of upholding the principles of respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity of states, and the prohibition on the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of another state, as enshrined in Article 2.4 of the United Nations Charter. Mr. Speaker, as far as I can recollect, that statement by the Security Council is the first and only statement that the Security Council has ever made with respect to the Guyana-Venezuela controversy, which through the strength of Guyana's diplomacy has now become part of the Council's agenda under the agenda item Threats to International Peace and Security. The court observed that it was the actions of Venezuela that concerned the Security Council. Mr. Speaker, we continue to address this matter at the diplomatic level. Ghana has used every United Nations General Assembly since 2020 to reaffirm our position on the controversy. We continue to engage the CARICOM, the OAS, the Commonwealth, our bilateral partners, on all of which have issued strong statements supporting Guyana's sovereignty and the International Court of Justice process. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation continues to improve its public relations strategy to educate the public and counter Venezuelan misinformation. We have engaged in direct outreach through our diplomats abroad to bolster our support and understanding of the legal process. Mr. Speaker, Venezuela has again rejected the ICJ's order, asserting that the court lacks jurisdiction over the matter and that it intends to carry out its planned elections. While our intelligence is that there is currently no physical activity taking place in any of our communities close to the border, or suggests that there is any preparation for elections to be conducted in our Essequibo, it is important for Venezuela to understand that Guyana will not be bullied, threatened, or intimidated to surrender any portion of our patrimony. We remain committed to international law and the peaceful resolution of this matter through the international court process. And we call upon Venezuela to comply with the court's legally binding orders and to refrain from actions that would destabilize this region and violate Guyana's territorial integrity. Of the will of the Guyanese people. It is a message to our international partners that Guyana remains steadfast in our commitment to peace, but unwavering in our defense of sovereignty. Mr. Speaker, before I close, let me take a moment to recognize the leadership of His Excellency the President. Let me also thank our officers at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation here